Have you ever wondered what a man is truly offering when he sleeps with someone? It's not just his body. It's not even the performance. It's the soul. A soul that is hungry. Hungry for validation. Hungry for warmth. Hungry to be chosen. Truly chosen. But here's the thing. This offering doesn't look like hunger. It comes wrapped in lust. It wears the costume of desire. And on the surface, it looks like skin brushing skin. But beneath that surface, there's a current. A deep, silent current. Because at the core, what a man seeks in sex isn't sex at all. It's presence. It's recognition. It's the terrifying hope that someone, somewhere, might look into the mess of him and still say, I see you. Even in your brokenness, I see you. When a man kneels before a woman's body, it may appear to be about pleasure. But more often, it's about a search for the affection he was never given, the love he never dared to ask for. It looks physical, but it is spiritual. It looks like lust, but it's really emptiness wearing the mask of power. Real intimacy doesn't just strip off clothing. It strips off masks. It breaks open the armor. And in that raw, disarming moment, the psychology of Carl Jung echoes like thunder. The body becomes an oracle, and the shadow becomes a mirror, but only to those brave enough to look, brave enough to feel. Jung never saw desire as just instinct. He understood that intimacy is a bridge, a narrow, sacred bridge between worlds, between what we know about ourselves and what we hide. Every act of intimacy reveals more than it appears, he once said. Desire isn't born in the body, it's born in the psyche. Every movement, every urge has roots buried deep in the unconscious. Sex is not just an act, it's an exchange of energy, of shadows, of intention. And when the wrong woman enters a man's life, what could have been healing becomes harm, physically, emotionally, spiritually. What should leave you full ends up draining you. And that fatigue? It doesn't come from the muscles. It comes from the soul, when you give yourself without being present. So many men walk away from sex, feeling emptier than before. They think they're just tired. They think it's just hormones. But deep down, they know something deeper has been lost. Every time you give your body without giving your presence, without true connection, you're not just having sex. You're trading pieces of yourself. For what? For fleeting moments. For crumbs of validation. For a feeling that vanishes the moment you walk out the door. The female body is sacred, a temple, but so is yours. And when two temples meet without consciousness, what you create isn't connection, it's chaos. This isn't about shame. This is about awakening. Because whether you know it or not, you are not just having sex, you're opening portals, and not every portal leads somewhere safe. The hidden child. Within every man. As this journey unfolds, you'll start to notice what was always there, but you weren't taught to see it. When a man truly surrenders in intimacy, he doesn't just reveal his body, he reveals his soul, the fear of being rejected, the insecurity he's masked with strength, the silence packed with things he never learned how to say. True intimacy isn't about naked skin, it's about being naked inside. It's in the pause between kisses, in the glance that lingers, in the stillness where his childhood pain rises to the surface. That invisible boy, the one who just wanted to be loved without having to earn it, he returns in that moment. And that is more terrifying than any physical exposure. How many men, in the middle of what looks like pleasure, are quietly crumbling on the inside? The strong face doesn't break from shouting, it breaks in silence. A single touch can awaken the memory of abandonment. A small gesture can expose a wound that's been buried for decades. Jung said, "The unconscious is always speaking, and in intimacy, it screams." The body becomes a stage where the soul performs its hidden pain. And this is why some men run when things get too close. Because real closeness means facing something they've avoided for years, the emotional mirror. And not everyone is ready to see who they really are. The collapse of the armor. The collapse of masculine strength doesn't always begin in crisis. It begins in a whisper, in a single touch, in a glance that slips through the cracks in the armor. And in that moment, something begins to awaken. But that awakening is just the beginning. Most men were raised to believe that giving pleasure is about technique. Make it good, impress her, prove your worth. But the kind of pleasure that touches the soul doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. To give pleasure can be a sacred act, not for her validation, not to prove anything, but as a way to return to that lost part of yourself, the one you buried to survive. The one you forgot was even there. At his core, every man carries softness, a delicacy the world told him to suppress. Jung called this the feminine within the man. And here's the paradox. When a man surrenders to real intimacy, he doesn't just touch her, he finally touches himself. The part of himself that's been in hiding, the one that doesn't perform, the one that just is. Sacred pleasure isn't about dominance, it's about depth. It's when the body becomes a mirror, a doorway, an echo of the soul. And in that moment, something ancient stirs, something no technique can fabricate. The rise of the feminine within. This is where sexuality stops being flesh and becomes ritual, where touch stops being transaction and becomes transformation, where desire rises not from emptiness, but from fullness. Real intimacy begins before a single touch. It begins in the space where words disappear, where listening happens with the body, with the soul, where the exiled sensitivity begins to rise again, no longer silenced. This isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about remembering who you are underneath the performance, and when that happens, pleasure becomes healing. But that kind of intimacy, it terrifies many men, not because they don't want it, but because they were never taught how to receive it. The craving beneath the craving. Many men say they want love. But when you go deeper, beneath the words, beneath the image, what they really crave is approval. Desire doesn't only rise from the longing to connect with another. It often rises from something far more ancient, a lack passed down through generations, the desperation to finally be chosen, not for what you do, not for what you prove, but simply for existing. In every relationship, that invisible child inside is waiting for someone to say, "I see you. You matter." And this is where the trap begins. Because when the thirst to be loved outweighs your ability to love yourself, the man begins to shapeshift. He bends. He erases himself. He sacrifices his soul for crumbs of attention. You've seen this man. Maybe you've been him. The one who's always available, always kind, always giving, and still ignored. Not because he's wrong, but because he's stuck in an emotional loop. Excessive kindness is often just pain wearing the mask of virtue. He's not loving, he's begging. Begging through the language of performance. And here's the problem. When you're performing to earn love, you are no longer you. You're an actor on a stage you didn't even know you entered. The dangerous projection. That's when the projection begins. He sees her not as she is, but as someone who can save him, heal him, validate him, be his everything, lover, mother, savior, confidant. But that's not love. That's the shadow's projection. A wounded cry for the affection he never received. And projections always break. Because no one, no matter how amazing, can fill the void you haven't dared to face yourself. When you place someone on a pedestal, you are not seeing them. You're seeing your own unmet needs reflected through them. And when they fail to fulfill your fantasy, the castle crumbles. Desire turns to resentment. Admiration turns to blame. Not because of them, but because of what you tried to extract from them. The inner collapse. You may think you're choosing her, but what's really happening is your unconscious choosing for you. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what's happening for many men. They think they're falling in love, but they're falling into the same wound again and again. Because the shadow, that hidden, wounded, rejected side of the self, is in the driver's seat. And the shadow doesn't seek connection, it seeks repetition. Every relationship becomes a replay of the past. Different faces, same wounds, same cycle, never closed. That's why intimacy can feel like a minefield. Not because the other person is toxic, but because the wounds inside you are still open. You show up wearing the mask of strength, but inside, you're collapsing. And you hope this woman will fill the hole you've never dared to sit with. Fortress or bridge. In this inner battle, the body becomes either a fortress or a bridge. A fortress, if you're using sex to protect your ego. A bridge, if you're using intimacy to meet your truth. The difference is everything. The shadow is not what you hate. It's what you hide from yourself. That fear of being seen, that panic of not being enough, that silent thirst for affection, all of it lives in the unconscious, waiting for intimacy to wake it up. And where does it emerge? In the glance that lingers too long, in the touch that triggers memory, in the quiet moments where you don't know how to speak. Emotional projection, and the danger of idealization. At some point, every man will project onto a woman the parts of himself he hasn't made peace with. He sees her, but he also sees everything he wants her to be, and that's where it breaks. He doesn't just want connection. He wants salvation. He wants the ache inside to go away, but no one can carry that for you. And when she fails to live up to the fantasy, because no one ever could, he feels betrayed. Not because she changed, but because he finally saw her as she is, not who he imagined. Idealization becomes resentment, devotion becomes blame, and what once felt sacred becomes poisoned. When intensity masquerades as love. This is how so many men confuse intensity with connection. They chase highs, they cling to people who mirror their wounds, they think feeling overwhelmed is proof of passion, but it's often just trauma colliding with trauma. Intensity is not love. Obsession is not intimacy. Performance is not presence. And no woman, no matter how beautiful, no matter how wise, can ever be the perfect mirror for a man who has not yet looked at himself. The mirror must begin within, and looking at that raw reflection takes a kind of courage most men are never taught to access. But without it, no relationship will ever feel safe, because no relationship can make up for the one you've been avoiding. The one with yourself. The truth about validation. Most men spend their lives waiting for validation. A compliment, a moment, a soft voice that says, "You are enough." But here's the sharp truth. That validation never lasts, because it comes from the outside, and whatever comes from the outside will always leave. True healing begins the moment a man stops begging for someone to choose him, and finally chooses himself. The first real step, self-knowledge, is not just a quote on your feed. It's not a book you finish and move on from. It's a daily practice, a ritual of sitting with what hurts, of listening without flinching, of asking the hard questions and not rushing to answer them. It's in that space, where the soul lies in pieces, that the real masculine awakening begins. That's when intimacy stops being a performance. That's when desire stops being manipulation. That's when your presence begins to carry weight. Because when desire is born from within, it no longer begs. It invites. It no longer clings. It stands grounded. It becomes a dance, not a transaction. It becomes a sacred act, not a desperate plea. That's the moment sex stops being an escape and starts becoming a return. When sex becomes a portal, there comes a point when a man must realize, not every woman deserves access to your body, and even fewer deserve access to your energy. Sex, when unconscious, becomes a channel, an open door through which your life force can be drained without you even realizing it. There are women who are emotionally fractured, addicted to drama, disconnected from their own souls. They walk around with a void inside them, And when you merge with that void, it doesn't fulfill you. It consumes you. You step into the experience seeking pleasure, and you leave it more empty than when you came. Still, you convince yourself it was worth it, it was desire. But what you don't see is that you didn't just sleep with her story. You slept with her energy, her traumas, her unhealed lineage, her demons, silent and invisible, now echoing in your space. The hidden cost of unconscious intimacy. What she lived with other men, the betrayals, the wounds, the hidden emotional contracts she still carries, that's all etched into her nervous system. And sex is the doorway through which all of that walks into your life. No words, no permission, just energy. You think you're just touching skin, but you're welcoming frequencies you don't understand. And if you're not awake, that fusion becomes contamination. Suddenly you feel tired. Apathy creeps in. You lose direction. Your clarity fades. You become confused, emotionally fogged, and spiritually depleted, and you don't even know why. This is not superstition. This is energetic hygiene, and most men were never taught how to protect theirs. Strength is not what you show. It means nothing to have muscles, to post confident captions, to wear spiritual language like a costume, if, in practice, you keep opening your soul to chaos. It takes more than discipline. It takes discernment. The ability to look at someone and ask, do you carry peace or a storm disguised as a smile? As long as you keep giving yourself to just anyone, just to silence the ache inside you, your soul will remain in ruins. And here's the tragedy. One day, it may not return from the places you've allowed it to be taken. The question that changes everything. Now ask yourself honestly, how many times have you laid beside someone, telling yourself it was just sex, but felt more lost afterward? How many times have you confused intensity for connection and gave your presence to someone who didn't even know how to care for herself, let alone for you? The answers may hurt, but they may also free you, because from this moment forward, you can no longer claim you didn't know. You do know. You now understand, sex is not a game. It is a ritual. The body is not a tool. It is an oracle. Every intimate choice you make either rebuilds you or buries you deeper. What will you choose? So the question is no longer, can I get her? The question becomes, does this connection deserve my sacred energy? Will you keep giving yourself fully, openly, to someone who only wants fragments of you? Or will you finally require a level of consciousness that matches your soul? This is where the new masculine is born, not from dominance, not from perfection, but from discernment. The soul doesn't want performance. Here's the truth most men avoid. The soul doesn't want performance. It wants presence. And the world has trained you to perform, to impress, to conquer, to win. But real fulfillment doesn't come from conquest. It comes from coming home. That's why so many men feel spiritually numb, because they've been giving away their essence in exchange for praise, touch, or temporary warmth. But warmth that isn't rooted in awareness burns out quickly and leaves a deeper chill behind. The mirror of self. No woman, no matter how magnetic, can reflect back your worth if you haven't first seen it for yourself. Until you meet you, you'll keep getting lost in others. You'll keep mistaking their attention for your value. But intimacy starts inward, and the courage to look into that mirror, to truly look, is what separates boys from men. Most men are waiting to be told they're enough, waiting for the moment she says, "You're the one. I choose you." But unless you choose yourself first, every compliment will feel like a hit that wears off. You'll always need more. The practice of knowing yourself. Self-knowledge isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the key to freedom. Not as a concept, but as a practice of silence, of solitude, of deep, internal listening. To sit with the parts of yourself that feel unworthy, ashamed, broken, and not run. Because in that raw, unfiltered space, the real masculine is born. From performance to presence. That's when intimacy becomes ritual. That's when touch becomes sacred. That's when desire stops being hunger and starts becoming expression. Expression of the soul, not desperation, not emptiness, not need. And that's where the shadow, once feared, becomes an oracle. That's where silence, once uncomfortable, becomes wisdom. The final pilgrimage. But to reach this place, a man must walk the hardest road, the road through himself. He must walk through the ego, through every false mask of strength, and strip them away, one by one. Because beneath those masks lies the thing the world tried to crush, his exposed humanity. Your energy is sacred. Protect it. Not every woman is your mirror. Not every bed is your home. Not every desire deserves to be followed. You are not here to prove your worth through performance. You are here to embody your truth. You are not just flesh. You are frequency. And the world responds not to your moves, but to your energy. The last word. So I'll leave you with this. From this moment on, you can no longer say you didn't know. Now you do. And now that you know, you choose. Will you continue offering all of you to someone who only wants a piece? Or will you wait, hold, breathe, and require a level of presence worthy of your soul? If this stirred something inside you, comment below the part that spoke to you most. Share it with a brother who needs to hear this. And subscribe, because what we explore here isn't just about sex. It's about who you are when no one is watching, not performance, presence.